Coming out of the tunnel, we have my co-host, the one, the only babyface assassin, Brock Vieira. Brock, there's almost no more college football left to discuss. I'm getting a little bit, I don't know, I'm feeling something, an emptiness a little bit. Obviously, we're going to open up talking about, I guess we have to, the upcoming national championship. And we'll touch on, obviously, the conscious uncoupling that may be taking place between Florida State and its conference, to quote or borrow from Gwyneth Paltrow, which happens all the time on college football shows. And then we'll have what they call on Jeopardy, potpourri. Boop, 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 boop. So let's open with the national championship game. I feel very smart because it's the teams that I picked. So that always helps, right? And plus, I know I've been saying this for a long time, and I feel better now that this has actually happened. I've been saying since before the season began, the SEC is on a down year as a whole. SEC is on a down year, and of course, I've taken some sniping. I've taken some ack, some sniping from people pointing out, X number percent of the players in the NFL are from the SEC and blah, blah, blah. And we're always in the playoffs and blah, blah, blah. And all that stuff's true. I'm not going to argue with facts, but I'm also going to point out who's left, right? The SEC, top to bottom, was not, to me, the best conference in football this year, and maybe not even the second best. But tell me, what do you see happening upcoming with this playoff?
Well, if we take a look back at my beautiful board behind me that none of you can see, I had Alabama, Michigan, Georgia, and USC in my playoff. Somewhat right. But I agree with you that the SEC clearly was on a downhill turn this year, and I don't think it's going to be something that's going to last a long time. I think when coming into the season, Will Rogers was like the number one quarterback in the conference for a lot of people. That was a telltale sign that maybe this is not how strong the conference could have been in years past. But I felt the strongest conference was the Pac-12, even though it was dying. And it's been proven time again. The Pac-12 has had a phenomenal year. Obviously, Washington is in the national championship game. Oregon just finished off a very fantastic, successful season with a New Year's Six Bowl victory. USC, who had a really huge down year, really impressed a lot of people with their performance in the Holiday Bowl. UCLA won the LA Bowl. Utah laid an egg against Northwestern in the Las Vegas Bowl, but they were still there, so that counts. Arizona took the hammer to Oklahoma. I know that game was close, but they forced Oklahoma to commit 6 turnovers. It was something ridiculous. The conference of the West as a whole was just fantastic, and I think that's going to be something that we're going to see continue on in this national championship game. I have Washington winning this one. Sorry to our boss, Joe Cardozo here at Team MBS Media. As we know how much of a diehard Michigan Wolverines fan he is. But I think Washington is going to send the Pac-12 off in style and absolutely demolish the Michigan Wolverines. But it does bring a sad point for me as well, because it's the final game of the season. We will have to wait, 8 long, hot, and cold months until the next season, and I'm just not ready for it to end yet.
Yeah, it's funny you should mention that. This is not just me saying this. My nose is already brown naturally. I would like Washington to win, but when I really break down the two teams, Michigan in the trenches, man, on both sides of the ball, even without Zenter, they are so good in the trenches. I wonder if Washington will be able to cope. I can't see how they'd be able to establish the run. Not that they always need the run. They hardly ran the ball in the last game. But I think this is a better pass rush than the last several they faced. I think that they cover better on the back end than the last couple of teams they faced. So I wonder now. Michael Penix will still do Michael Penix things, and his receiving core is. I think we can put the debate to bed. It's the best in college football, right? I think we can say that's LSU. That's a nice bunch of guys. Even USC has a scrappy bunch of impressive, and fun to watch guys, but nobody really successfully compares to that Washington group. because they've got everything. They've got speed. They've got size. They've got guys with great body control and hands. They've got guys who can run after the catch. They've got guys who can block. They've got everything, right? They've got possession. They don't have a weakness, and they have a sneaky good tight end on top of it. So it's a contrast. Pardon me for saying the great football cliche, but it's a contrast of styles. And the Big Ten school is very much like a Big Ten school, right? I mean, it's not quite Iowa, but they do want to really put it to you in the run game, and then hit you, deep off play action occasionally. They would like to push you around in the trench. I mean, really push you around in the trenches. We saw what they did to. I mean, that's what the SEC people always say. Oh, other teams can hang with us on the outside. You might have receivers as good as ours. You might have defensive backs as good as ours. But where does the SEC separate itself from everybody else? They say year after year, it's the trenches. Not this year. Not this year, buddy. Not LSU, not Ole Miss, not Alabama, not Georgia. None of those teams compare in the trenches to Michigan. Not one of them. And I knew that coming in, and that's why I ended up picking Michigan. And I just thought Washington has all that team of destiny stuff, but I feel like midnight's approaching for Cinderella. I would love for Washington, especially with the Pac-12, the sun setting on the conference. I'd love to see Washington win, but I don't know. I'll keep working on it. This may not be my final declaration, but at the moment, I'm leaning Michigan as much as I would love to see Washington win. Let's get a little bit into the X's and O's of it. And we talked a few weeks ago about the defense that they run. What do you think are some of the advantages, despite all the things I just said, that Washington does have in this game where they're going to have to, really have their best day?
So the thing that I love about Washington, first from the offense side of football, is that they can spread and shred any defense in the country. And I love Michigan's defense as much as anybody else. I think they have two really good corners, and Mike Sanderstill and Will Johnson. However, I think that Washington has too much talent for the rest of the Michigan DBs to cover. Keep in mind that Michael Penix Jr. has been hitting his stride these past couple of games. That Oregon game, he was out of the Heisman race without a doubt. It was down to Jaden Daniels and Bo Nix. The entire country was betting that Bo Nix is gonna be the star that day. Oregon was a minus 9-point favorite in that game. Michael Penix came crazy, right? Michael Penix came in and took Oregon's defense, ran by one of the more premier defensive minds all college football, Dan Lanning, to the woodshed. They demolished Oregon defense through the pass game. And I think Oregon has better DBs. And that's where I think Michigan is going to suffer, is that I think that they're going to attack them with a quick, concise passing game that is going to allow Michael Penix to basically do whatever he wants to that defense. The wide receivers we've talked about previously and how great they are. I think Rome Odunze is going to have a Devontae Smith type of game, like how he had against Ohio State. And I don't really think they're going to have to rely on their run game that much. With that being said, Dylan Johnson is still an excellent threat. The Bernard kid is still an excellent player. And keep in mind, Washington's offensive line isn't as bad as people say it is. I'm not saying people are saying it's bad, but people are going to say that Michigan's going to dominate them in the trenches. First of all, Polynesians. All right, that's my first argument. Majority of them have some type of Polynesian blood in them. So just give them some kava, and they'll be good to go. And secondly, we're talking about one of the best tackle prospects in all college football, and Troy Fontana. So,
facts.
Technically, that's not Penix's blind side because he's a left-handed thrower, but the blind side is on the right. But still, you have one of the most premier blockers on a side of which you're gonna have your premier pass rushers coming on. Are you gonna switch them up to the other side? What are you gonna do to combat that? And realistically, if you're Michigan, the way Washington's offense is structured, you can only rush 4. If you bring the blitz or you bring the heat or you even rush 5, you're going to get beat. So I think that there's going to be a lot of limitations placed on Michigan's defense because of the flexibility and versatility of this Washington offense. On the other side of the ball, impressed at Michigan's offense. I think that they have a really good play caller. I think they have good weapons. And if you look at McCarthy's stats from the Rose Bowl, you think that they have a great quarterback, but I was thoroughly unimpressed with J.J. McCarthy. I think he gets way too much credit that he deserves. Would you ask him to be a basic pocket passer? He is not good. He's great as a dual threat guy, but they don't really build off of his abilities that much. And I think Washington's defense is way too good for them to even try and put in those little wrinkles that can allow him to use his legs. I think that they're going to have to do some different things in order to get him to be successful. I think that he throws inaccurate passes at times. I think that he benefited a lot from Alabama just not being able to establish a good pass rush against him. I don't think that Washington is going to have a significantly better pass rush, but I think that they're going to be more stout defensively, especially in their secondary, headlined by Jabbar Muhammad. I think that they're going to have some difficulty getting the ball downfield. I think that the fact that Blake Corum has been the workhorse for them might come back to bite them. David Everett has not had the season that we expected it to have after having what the success he had last year. And you look at these stats, they needed Tyler Morris, a guy that was a virtual nobody to everybody, to step up huge for them in that game. And outside of Blake Corum, their offense production does not look good. Blake Corum accounted for over 100 yards of total offense and 2 touchdowns in a 27 to 20 game. So if they can find a way to curtail Corum in any way and force McCarthy to throw from the pocket, I think Michigan is going to have a very tough day in the office. And Washington, that's why I feel like Washington is going to come out victorious. Now, everything I said could be wrong. I can also admit that. But I just look at all the factors. I think Washington has a better offense. I think they have more a defense that's more easily to adjust to their play style than Alabama had. And lastly, they're playing in Houston. I said it before, and I'll say it again. When there's a line, there's a parallel in this country where if Michigan plays below it, they do not play well. I haven't found exactly where that line is yet, but I can promise you, Houston, Texas is definitely below it. So that's why I'm going with the Huskies in this one.
Yeah, well, and I'm not disagreeing with you just to do it. I really like a lot of what you said, and I really like Washington. Like, I like the program. I love Michael Penix, his story, how he's bounced back from so many things, surgeries and season-ending injuries and all that kind of stuff. It's a fantastic story. I would have given him my vote for the Heisman, right? He would have been my Heisman Trophy winner. I think the thing that I want to see is that nickel on slot receiver matchup, right? I think that they'll be able to bottle up Washington's run game. Though I really like Dylan Johnson. I really do. I think he's wildly underrated. And I hope that, people realize what they're looking at, like who he is, and he doesn't end up, being drafted super late. But unfortunately, that's sadly the way things often are. But he's a really good football player. But I mean, between Jalen McMillan, Rome Odunze, and obviously Jalen Polk, all those guys are going to play at the next level. I want to see, particularly though, that Jalen McMillan matchup, right? Yeah, and so, correct. Slot. Yep, to me that's the game. Mm-hmm. To me, that's the game. If Sanders still has the game of his life, right, and holds up, and I mean, McMillan's going to get some yards, but doesn't go off, right? I think that they'll give up a couple of big plays to Polk deep. But as long as it's just 1 or 2, and Rome Odunze is going to do what Rome Odunze does. He's going to get, but they hold him to like 80-something yards and 1 touchdown, right? You have to be realistic. You're not going to stop him. But if you hold him to 87 yards and a touchdown, you can live. You can survive. If they hold Polk to 4 catches, 2 which are big plays, 27 yards on one and maybe, 32 on another, and then the other 2 are like little quick outs, right? So they keep him to 70-something yards and maybe 1 touchdown. That's 2 touchdowns. That's 14 points, right? And to me, the question is how they deal with the slot. If Jalen McMillan has the game of his life, 177 yards and 3 touchdowns, then yeah, turn out the lights. Michigan go home because they're not capable of scoring at that rate, right? They're not a team that's going to win a shootout. You know it. I know it. And guess what? They know it. I think they're going to try to do what they did, slow the game down a little bit. But you're right. Sometimes I think that the JJ in McCarthy stands for Jabal Javon, but I guess it doesn't. But yes, you're right. A lot of his play is classic black quarterback play, but no one will ever talk about it because he's clearly not black. But he does a lot of, he bails out sooner than he has to. He doesn't always get to some of his back. There's big plays. There's meat left on the bone sometimes because he doesn't work his way back to the backside. There's guys sometimes running free on the backside. He never gets to them. He takes off. So, yeah, I'm not one of those people that, I mean, there's people who have him as high as quarterback 2 or 3.
Yeah, those people have lost their damn mind.
Right. I do not have him that high. And if it were up to me, I'd tell him to come back. Like, go to school, kid. I mean, if not there someplace for one more year. Yeah, and then you have a chance to be quarterback.
NIL money, become a better quarterback. The part that I just got to interject and say, I heard someone, I'm not going to say who, I heard someone say that when they came to the last play of the Rose Bowl, that quarterback draw that could have possibly been an RPO or whatever, somebody said that Jalen Milroe failed Alabama because he panicked, he got the ball, he ran right into the tackles, which is one, a crock of, and two, the second part was that somebody said if J.J. McCarthy was in that exact situation, they believe that he would have somehow found a way to get the job done. That sentence in itself is a microcosm of the public's idea of what J.J. McCarthy is. They give him much more credit for a multitude of reasons that we don't have to say out loud, but we know. We know. Right? We know. I think that's going to come. I think that's going to come back to bite him because I think that he's starting to feed into that narrative himself that he can do the impossible because he's done some really athletic things before. However, those athletic things won't matter if he's not able to operate within the structure of this Michigan offense, which is already very limited because they don't really have tremendous amount of like first round talent at the skill positions.
I was gonna say, as always, they have a good tight end who they don't throw the ball enough to, in my opinion. Actually, they do have one wide receiver I really like, but he's a wide receiver 3, probably at the next level. He's a good player in Roman Wilson, and then they don't really have an answer. I mean, if you take Wilson away, you can still get the ball to your backs and your tight ends, but that means your explosive play opportunities are virtually gone. Now, it should be pointed out that in the last game we saw, they didn't manage to take Wilson away. But you're right in saying that Washington has a better, I think, this is like utter sacrilege, but I think they have a better coached secondary, at least this year, than Alabama. And I know people are going to riot or set things on fire or whatever it is, but that Alabama secondary,
which is crazy because they have excellent players. I'm big fans of every DB in that room. Malachi Moore, Terrion Arnold, Cliff McKinstry, Troy Amos, and of course Caleb Downs. Love them all.
Every single one was going to play on Sundays. Yep.
But for some reason, the coaching just was not at the level it needed to be. Whether that's because Kevin Steele might be a little bit behind on modern times, or Nick Saban might be behind on modern times, or whoever the DB coach is not teaching proper techniques. I don't know. I don't have the answer. But what I do know is that when McCarthy was forced to throw it into tight spaces or to try and find voids, he struggled mightily. And may I add that Michigan only won that football game because Alabama gave it to them in the fourth quarter. Alabama had 2 possessions in which if they scored a touchdown, the game would have been done. And what did they do? Actually, it might have been 3. I can't remember exactly. But I do know 2 low snaps on one drive kind of ruined one. Jalen Milroe fumbling ruined another, and then getting stopped and having to settle for a field goal ruined it. Washington isn't a team that's going to have those kind of errors. And that kind of goes to a question that one of our team members here at DMS Media said, Courtney Walsh, she asked, does Washington have too many weapons for this Michigan defense? I think that they do. And it's not only that they have too many weapons, they have an offensive corner that knows how to utilize them, and they have a quarterback that can deliver the football to them at almost any point from any platform, against any coverage. When you have the type of flexibility that they have on offense, I just don't see how Michigan is going to be able to keep up with them defensively. I think that Junior Colson is a linebacker that is really good at playing the run, but I have some major questions for him when it comes to his ability to cover. I have some major questions when it comes to this Michigan's defensive line and being able to get actual pressure on Penix because Penix is really good at getting the ball out quickly. compared to a guy like Milrow, who takes a little bit longer to get the ball out, relies on his athleticism a little bit more. I think that when you go against a team like Washington, Michigan's going to struggle mightily, not only because of that, but because they haven't faced anything like that yet. They haven't faced a quarterback of the quality of Michael Penix. They haven't faced offense as efficient and as dynamic as Washington's. And maybe that's a credit because they have a cupcake schedule and they didn't really play a team in the Big Ten that had the quarterback, the weapons, and the coaching come together like Washington's does. But I'm sorry. I just don't see how Washington can pull this off. Secondly, may I add, Justice Haynes was on the verge of having a breakout game for Alabama in that fourth quarter, and for some unknown reason that I can't tell, they just stopped going to him. He only had 4 carries for 31 yards. He was averaging almost 8 yards a carry at one point in that game, and they just stopped. Washington isn't going to do that. They're going to keep going back to what they do best. And when they find something that works, they will exploit you for it. And as much as I love Jesse Minter as a defensive coordinator, I don't know if he's going to have the personnel to be able to adjust to whatever Washington throws at them for 60 minutes.
I will say this, my young cohort and co-host. I might be convinced to change my. No, I won't quite be convinced, but I will say this. I want to see what the line is. But if it's more than like 2.5, yeah, I might. If I were betting, I probably would bet on Washington. I think it's gonna be an extremely close game. I think Michigan's path to victory, and probably their only path to victory, is, like I said, to slow it down. Iowa things up a little bit. Get either punch out. Maybe punch a ball out of somebody's hands or pick a ball off or force get a strip sack interception. They're going to need to get at least 1 or 2 extra possessions. And they're going to need to, every time they get close in, score, whether it be a field goal or a touchdown. I think if they can slow the game down, which is really how they've won a lot of the games they've won against good offenses. And you're right, they haven't faced anything quite like Washington. Very few teams have. I mean, Washington is very balanced, very complete, with a really, really terrific play calling, really good play design, and a quarterback who does find that lost change on the backside that a lot of quarterbacks don't. He does work through his progressions. He does have almost Stroud-esque ball placement. Some guys, they're accurate, but the guy's still like adjusting to the ball. He drops the ball in dudes' hands time after time after time. They stick their hands out. Whoop, there's the football. Despite all that, and yes, I do much prefer Penix to McCarthy, but I think that Michigan is going to push Washington around a little bit. You're right. They do have a lot of angry Polynesians of various sorts, Samoans, Tongans, etc. And that does give them a chance. It does. I mean, I think that to me is going to be a real revelation to me. If indeed Washington's offensive and defensive line plays even with or better than Michigan, well, yeah, they'll win and they'll win by 2 touchdowns. You're right. I mean, they'll win and they'll win. I just don't know if they can. That'll be the exploration. That'll be the new information for us. If they can hold up, because they haven't seen a line, including Michigan, offensive or defensive line as good as this, right? Washington hasn't seen that. And, I mean, there's nobody that compares to that receiver trio. I'm sorry, whoever else you want to bring up, Ohio State. I mean, Ibuka's nice, and I forgot the other kid's name, who's really fast but underutilized. Who's the fast guy they don't throw the ball to?
Julian Fleming.
Yeah, there we go.
The guy that transferred to Penn State.
Right. Well, I don't blame him. They forgot he was on the team at times, it seems.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they were Marvin Harrison Jr. or nothing, and yeah. No, you're absolutely right. The one final thing I want to add before we move on from this topic, what really impressed me about Washington's offensive line, the way they handled Tavondre Sweat and Byron Murphy II was incredible. Those are guys that we've discussed in the past, guys that we both have very high grades on, and those grades have remained even after that game. It just impressed me how they were able to handle them, and even when they did get through, how Penix was able to move in that pocket. Was just a beauty to watch. Now, again, I could be dead wrong about that, and Michigan does have a very clear path to victory. The question will be whether they can execute or not. I just think the one thing that's gonna bother me is when you look at the end of that Sugar Bowl and how Texas was almost able to come back, will that be a lesson to Washington, or will that change up how they do things at the end of the game in crunch time? That's the kind of that big factor for me at the moment.
Yep. Now, for those that maybe didn't go to law school but wish they had, it's going to be so much fun to dig into our next topic. I know you've been dying to hear about what's in this very voluminous PDF that I've been pouring through because I'm a psychopath. So there's a lot in there. I didn't go to law school. My mother desperately wanted me to. I even took the LSAT just to, make my mom happy.
Anything for mama.
Anything for mama. But I knew that the law was not my passion. But I do still have sort of a little interest in it. So, he had that effect on my mom. So what FSU is hanging their hat on, a hat worth several $1 million, in fact, as it may turn out, is that the burden placed on them by the grant of rights contract is onerous, right? And that the amount they would have to pay to be free from it is, not commensurate with the value of the contract. That's what they're going to try to say. Now, selling that to someone is another matter. I don't know how much you've decided. You just yawned, so I guess I'm going to guess that maybe not that deeply. But I'll give it a once over lightly and hopefully not bore you and everyone else to tears.
Oh, no. I had an early start to the morning, so that was nothing against you.
Oh, I understand. I was half kidding. But it is not the most scintillating reading. If you are not a lawyer and have no interest in being a lawyer, parts of it will not stimulate you. I can warn you about that now. But the heart of the lawsuit, the main cogent points of it, which I will try to summarize in a way that, like I said, does not make everyone yawn, is that if indeed a conference is to essentially be almost like a collective bargaining group or agent to try to get the best thing for the conference, it may not always be the best thing for every individual member of the conference, which is how collective things work. You see, that's kind of why it's collective, because it's not meant to simply enhance the value of one member of the conference. So we're talking about potentially up to $500 million being at stake, which when you say it like that, explains why people sue in these situations. So now Florida Attorney General Ashley Moody has sent a letter to the ACC requesting documents be sent, including, once again, that truly exciting grant of rights agreement, which you can get a PDF of if you're truly a sicko. But the contract was executed originally in 2014, and it was between ESPN, ACC, and the Walt Disney Corporation. And it gave the ACC a decent little chunk of change in exchange for, once again, that grant of rights through 2036. And what they're trying to do, and the ACC is housed in Charlotte, North Carolina, what they're trying to do is say there are things in here that we believe to be unfair. And they also believe that the documents have been locked away in North Carolina. Now, that is where these documents are secure, because that's, once again, where the conference's headquarters are put. It's not like they are intentionally, well, maybe they are intentionally, but even if they are doing it intentionally to keep it away from, prying eyes or whatever in Florida, the fact is that is the place where they should be. I mean, legally speaking. North Carolina's and Florida's state laws are very clear that these agreements are public records and must be handed over. So that's what the Florida AG is saying, and taking action to ensure that Florida State and the public are able to view these agreements. So you can get through leaks many of these documents. Hit me up in my DMs if you want to know more. But everything gets leaked nowadays. Shout out to Julian Assange. But the fact is that if and when this it's coming to a head now, I guess, essentially, what is going to happen, or is happening, is that if indeed Florida State is able to successfully get free, conferences are basically dead. I mean, I'll be shocked if they're the only team in a conference that isn't somehow unhappy with something. And obviously, in their case, it was spurred by the snub. The school alleges, amongst other things, a restraint of free trade, breach of contract, failure to perform over what is described with years of mismanagement that have locked ACC schools, which I will now quote the documents, in a deteriorating media rights agreement while preventing schools from leaving with draconian withdrawal penalties.
Ooh.
You can always tell when lawyers like to spice things up. That's somebody saying I'm going to throw a little spice in there. That's what they did. They said draconian. That's nice. Yeah. So the question is, can they? Right? They want to go, but can they go? That, of course, is that is everything. That's the whole thing. That's the whole enchilada. They made it clear that missing the playoffs is not the only reason this is happening, though it's clearly the main reason. The school has not been shy about staying its displeasure with the conference. Even before that, they said back in August they thought something needed to be done about what the ACC has or has not done for them. But this was essentially the straw that broke the ACC camel's back. So if they made the playoff, they would still have challenged the grant of rights. They say at the board meeting, Justin Roth had asked for an exit plan to leave the ACC by as soon as August of 2024, even before all this happened. And the lawsuit, Florida State estimates it would cost them an estimate of about $572 million to leave the ACC without a legal victory or a settlement. They would forfeit $429 million in media rights through 2036. And when the ACC contract with ESPN expires, $13 million in unreimbursed broadcast fees, with an exit fee, essentially a poison pill of $130 million, which is 3 times the league's operating budget. So, for those that don't love to read legal documents, I'll briefly explain what a grant of rights is. The legal document signed by every member of a collective, in this case the ACC, that transfers ownership of something, in this case media rights, from the school to the conference. It means that the ACC, not Florida State or any other member school, owns the right to their broadcast of games or other events. The school signed this, once again, in reaction to to losing Maryland to the Big Ten. Under the rationale, the grant of rights was insurance policy to prevent other teams from leaving. Florida State was also fully on board at the time, as I'm sure will be brought up when this case goes to court. So, in other realignment scenarios, schools can either wait out the grant of rights. The Pac-12's, of course, ended or is ending summer 2024, or they pay a hefty buyout. Texas and Oklahoma each paid $50 million each to get out of the Big 12. But for Florida State or any other team, believe ACC, the dollars and duration are far more imposing. This is the biggest poison pill, as far as I know, of any conference. There's 12 seasons remaining on the deal. They would need to either wait far longer than they feel is acceptable, or they would need, once again, to pay a very large exit fee. Hence, getting them to this option, which is to go to court and hopefully, in their minds, find a legal framework for exiting sooner and hopefully, I think they hope, at a lower cost. So, God, I hope that laid it out in a way that people understand. But essentially, like I said, it is a wolf gnawing off its paw to get out of a trap, while hoping not to swallow a poison pill at the same time. If that's one in a way, if you want a visual way to think about it, the wolf in this, of course, analogy is Florida State, and the trap is that grant of rights, which essentially, snaps down on the paw of the wolf to the tune of possibly, now once again, it's an estimate, as much as $572 million between unreimbursed media rights, actual lost revenue, and that $130 million poison pill. Woo! So hopefully that answered that question. What do you think of all this? As a person who may or may not have obsessed about this in the past, what do you think?
I mean, the question is, if you are able to find a legal loophole or dollar amount or some type of compromise that allows you to exit the conference, where do you go if you're Florida State? The SEC doesn't really want you, because in order to get to the SEC, you would need to come in with a partner, which means that probably that would have to be Miami, but that would be a whole separate thing that you have to accomplish. The Big Ten doesn't really want you. The Big 12 can't really afford to bring you in, because they've lost 2 teams in Oklahoma and Texas, and then added 8 teams in Houston, BYU, Cincinnati, UCF, and then of course now Arizona, Arizona State, Utah, and Colorado. Where do you go? Do you try and find a whole bunch of other people and try to restart the Pac-12? Obviously, the terms Atlantic and Pacific don't mean anything anymore. But what route? I suggested independence, but that's just a suggestion. Where where do you go? Honestly, I get why they're doing this. I think they're trying to get in front of a potential issue in case the ACC can't secure another top TV deal. But I I understand the frustrations of this year, but we're going to expand the playoff next year. You are still one of the top teams in the conference. You're a big fish in a small pond. What's the goal of leaving here? More money? Because where are you gonna find it? A better possibility of making the playoffs? That doesn't really matter anymore because again, expand the playoffs. What's the goal here? And that's the part that's a bit confusing for me.
And I'll just say this: going independent would probably actually damage their chances of being in the playoff because you've pretty much got to be perfect if you're an independent, unless you somehow put together a real like steamroller killer schedule. Which the other thing that conference expansion has done is it's reduced the number, or should reduce the number of out of conference games to 2 probably for most of these conferences. It's hard to justify all this expansion if you're not going to play each other.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm trying to think. I mean, a lot of the SEC schools are resistant, to going to a 9-game conference schedule, but how much longer can they come up with excuses for doing it? And a lot of these other conferences have already moved to having a 9-game conference schedule, meaning that you only have 3 out of conference games. And while Florida State is attractive to several teams, I mean, they'd be attractive to obviously anybody in the state of Florida. I think they have a certain amount of cachet throughout the rest of the Southeast, even. But is Notre Dame going to? I mean, maybe Notre Dame says they'll play you. Maybe there's not a lot of independents left at this point, right? I mean,
exactly.
I'm old enough to remember when there was lots of big time independents like Penn State, Virginia Tech. I mean, Virginia Tech wasn't a big time program, but they were an independent. There were a lot of fairly notable independent programs at one point. The service academies used to be independents, but almost all of the attractive independents, with the one obvious exception, have been snapped up. So scheduling is going to be kind of a bear, frankly, Brock. So I'm with you on I'm not sure, other than venting and allowing somebody's legal team to, get that summer home. I'm not sure what else will be gained by this. Yeah, we can move on from that.
Yeah.
Before we close out, what else do you want to talk about, my friend?
Let's talk about the transfer portal real quick. I just want to say some thoughts about it. The quarterback market is one of the most incredible and saturated elements of the transfer portal I've seen. Now, obviously, there's people that like transfer portal, people that don't like it. I love it. I think it provides kids a great opportunity to find themselves an opportunity that is ideal for them, whether that be for the good program, financially, so on and so forth, whatever. However, the quarterback is the one position in all college football in which you must be a starter in order to see any type of playtime, unless, of course, the other quarterback gets injured. You can see playtime as a second string linebacker or a third string linebacker. You can see playtime as a second stringer in any position except the quarterback position. And right now we are seeing a mass accumulation of quarterbacks that have a variety of similar skill sets that I think are going to struggle to either find homes or not find the improvements that they've been searching for. Recently, at least on the West Coast, so many quarterbacks have either come in or gone out. For example, DJ Uyagalele is not at Florida State. Aiden Childs not Michigan State. Dante Moore is at Oregon, where he's joined by Dylan Gabriel. Jaden Delora has hit the portal. Maiva has hit the portal. Jaden Maiva from UNLV has hit the portal. Diego Paiva from New Mexico State has hit the portal. Keldon Saiter, if I pronounced his name correctly, from Liberty, has hit the portal. Grayson McCall
Salter.
hit.
Yeah.
Thank you, Salter. Grayson McCall before I went to NC State hit the portal, and now I'm going away from the West Coast, but I'm just kind of illustrating a point. There's a lot of guys that have hit the portal that some I understand, some I don't, and the major question is that the right move for you? Cam Ward was one of those guys coming in from Incarnate Ward that we thought was going to come in and light the scoreboard up, and he did briefly, and the defense is caught up and wasn't able to adjust. Had he somehow found a way to stick with J.G. Keeney at Incarnate Ward and then eventually to Texas State, if that was a possibility, he would be a top 10 pick right now. That isn't the case. What I want to see as we continue this journey forward, how much will quarterbacks stay if the current quarterbacks don't pan out at their new institutions? Alex Bowman is a primary example, who was just granted his 7th year of eligibility, who will be playing at Oklahoma State next year. He started out his career.
That's Dr. Alan Bowman to you, young man.
I hope so at this point. He started out his career at Texas Tech, had a phenomenal time there. Eventually, somehow went to Michigan. We all kind of forgot about him. He was up there for like 3 years and has refound himself in year 6 at Oklahoma State. If he stayed at Texas Tech, there's a high chance that he would be one of the greatest quarterbacks to ever play for the Red Raiders. You can say that about a lot of places. I'm just concerned that maybe we have a little bit too much players, especially the quarterback position in the transfer portal, and that it's not going to pan out for like 70% of these people.
Yeah, I mean, I remember Bowman the Showman from his time at Texas Tech, and him joining that sort of lineage of Texas Tech quarterbacks. That many of whom, like B.J. Simons and others, who put up big numbers but never really did much, above that point. I'll be fascinated to see what comes next for Mr. Bowman. It is something when you hear the term 7th year. I mean, that's not a super senior. That's not a super duper senior. That, my friends, is a super, super duper duper senior. I'd love to know what he's even studying at this point, right? I mean, by rule, you do still have to be a student. So,
animal husbandry. I'm
sure, why not?
Shooting in the dark here.
Well, I mean, I'm happy for him if he's happy with it. And if it happens, I mean, it's just fascinating to me because I remember when it was like a big deal when a guy got a 5th year of eligibility back in the old days. And now, clearly, the glut of quarterbacks, you mentioned that, and then you add to it the COVID-19 and extra eligibility that guys have had. Now, some guys have decided not to use it, but clearly Alan Bowman did not get the memo about not using. He's used all of his eligibility and then now tapping into, it feels like someone else's at this point. It is fascinating to see. And once again, if it helps him, if he ends up having a great season and maybe if somebody takes a shot at him late, though, I think if he wants to stay around the game, he probably should look at coaching. I mean, he practically is coaching at this point. But it is fascinating to me how this is playing out. And then, even players who haven't even, Malachi Nelson and, you have guys who are backups from Texas, backups from USC, backups from these places hitting the portal when the guy that they've been sitting behind is leaving, right? So, I mean, that was sort of the whole point of you sitting for this year was now everything's set up and now you get a chance to play. And then, they're leaving anyway. I don't know if it's because, the 4 or 5 star that's coming in is somebody they don't feel like competing with or what. But yeah, you're right. The portal has, and I'm a fan. Like, I'm never going to be against opportunities for players to find the best situation for them. Ever going to be against that. I do think that they need some sort of uninvolved, objective somebody, the same way that sort of the NFL can provide, when someone feels like they should maybe think about declaring, could say, hey, here's what the NFL thinks of you. There should be something like that, an advisory board of some sort in college football, maybe made up of former directors of recruitment or something, people who are no longer associated with a team, but, 12-member board, blue ribbon panel, whatever, maybe a couple of coaches sprinkled in, but a bunch of directors of recruitment who say, oh, yeah, this is a great idea. You should definitely hit the portal. Or you may find yourself, learn to speak JUCO, buddy. So, that will happen to some of these people. Not everybody's going to find a home when the music stops. So Brock, before we say goodbye to the second to last of our shows, one left. Then I don't know what. I guess I have to just bother you on the weekend just for fun. But anything else you'd like to say?
Just want to say thank you to everyone who's watched us throughout the season. It's been another phenomenal year of college football, another phenomenal year of college football forecasts. We've had our ups, not many downs, which has been great. We've improved in a variety of ways, both personally, professionally, and just with our analysis of this great game. I want to thank all of the players who have sacrificed their time, their bodies, and even their souls for this great game. I know the work you guys put in the off season. I know the work you guys put in during the regular season. And I know all the sacrifices you have to make. Just because I know it doesn't mean I can empathize with it. Doesn't mean I truly understand it, because I was never in your shoes and I never will be. But I do know what you all have to go through, and I'm grateful for it. Same thing to the coaches. I sit at a desk behind a computer screen and ridicule all of you all the time. You are the ones that have to go out there, make decisions with very limited information, and have to live with the consequences of things that you can't even predict. I respect that, and I respect you all. I want to thank everyone involved with this great game, all the coaches, players, and support staff, the fans, the legacies, just everybody. It's been such a great year, and though I'm sad that it will be concluding, I'm grateful that we have an opportunity, especially in this ever-changing world of just the world and of college football, that every Saturday we get a chance to sit down, relax, put our feet up, and enjoy this great game. I love college football. I've loved it for a long time, and I will continue to love it to the day I die. It is only possible because of people like you all. And thank you. I look forward to seeing what you guys do in 2024. I look forward to criticizing it. Look forward to talking about it. And I just can't wait. And good luck to Michigan. Good luck to Washington. Give us a great game to end this great season. And before you go, I just want to tell everybody that's watching this, like and subscribe, because that's exactly what we need. And we want to continue to grow here at Team MBS Media, and we'll continue to provide you as much coverage as possible.
Next week, we'll just look back at this season. We'll probably bring back some of our. Maybe we'll have like a free for all battle for who's the number one friend of the show. We'll bring back some of our fan favorites. You know them, you love them, and we'll maybe take a look forward at trying to predict what we think will happen in the next season, because that's always embarrassing. And what better way to end than to have some outrageous predictions about what we think will happen in the future that we will later be made to eat slowly as we feel less intelligent. But
Absolutely.
Once again, as you said so eloquently, the thing that I love about this game is because it's so difficult, because it costs you so much of your time and your effort and your body and every part of you, right? It takes your emotions, it takes everything. And I did try to play this game, and I played it poorly by any measure. And if I had any sense, I would have stopped playing sooner than I did. But when it came to this game, I didn't, right? The thing about this game is it took away my fear of injury. It took away, it made me see myself in a way that was unrealistic. Which is, I guess, both a good thing and a bad thing. But I felt something about putting on pads and taping up your ankles made me feel invincible. And I was not invincible. I was bad, but it made me feel invincible. This game will test parts of you didn't know existed, will make you question everything about why, as you said, why do I do this, right? Why do I love it so much? And, a tiny percentage of them will ever make money playing this game. A tiny percentage of them will ever make $1 playing the game. For most of them, they will end the game not on their own terms. Most of them will end the game with nothing but memories and sore places to take with them as they go off into the sunset. But for every single one of them, I love the game, but I also have a little bit of love for every single person who's decided to play this game, as difficult as it is. And for those of us that, as you said, sit and criticize, it is good for us to remember that we are not good enough, right? That the reason somebody isn't sitting talking about us is that we were not good enough. I remind myself of that every now and again. Once again, on behalf of Team MBS Media, and of course, the babyface assassin himself, Brock Vieira, I am Bill Carroll. This is Team MBS Media, and we will have one more of these. So one last time to bloviate about our love of this amazing game, and then Brock and I will just have to mess around with each other in the DMs or bother each other by phone or text.
Yes.
Once again, everybody, I cannot thank everybody enough. I wish I could, but not just obviously everyone who's watched, everybody who's ever said anything, done anything, etc. Also, just everyone who's supported us, both inside and outside of Team MBS. Once again, Happy New Year to all of you, and we'll do this again one more time, just one more time. In 1 week, everybody. Be good to each other and hug your loved ones.